Hello guys, this is Trevor with Java Video Tutorials. Once again, this is lesson 10 and this will be our final lesson before we venture off into the realms of object-oriented programming, which is certainly going to be a very interesting topic for you guys, especially if you've never done it before. But one last thing I want to do before we get to that is go over nested loops and two-dimensional arrays, or maybe even more than one dimension. But once I show you two dimensions, then you'll be able to go do more than two dimensions. You'll be able to write a 20-dimension array and loop over it if you wanted to. And where's Dr. Java? Doesn't look like he's coming up. Let me try that again. Here it comes. Maybe I didn't hit enter or something. So let's put this in your window here. Okay. There we are. Okay, 2D array. Well, arrays, as you know them right now, are linear, meaning that every piece of data is by itself, and they just have a simple order: 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And the way a 2D array works is I have sort of a matrix of data, and these are going to be really useful when you have any kind of grid that you need to work with in Java. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new class, call it public class, call it no, I can't start with a number. I'm going to call it, I'm just going to call it matrices. Okay, and then we'll do our public void main. Okay, so basically when you get down to it, a two-dimensional array in Java, note that this can be different in other languages, but in Java all you really have is an array of arrays. So let's just create a regular array first and call it int array, you know, just call it x equals new int, and then we'll say it's got 5 elements. So you've seen this before, but if I wanted to create a data type that was an array of int arrays, that'd be kind of like putting this object in parentheses and then I have an array of those. But the proper syntax that you'll see is just like this. You're going to have an int array array. So the way I initialize that is by using another pair of brackets. So this is going to be my rows here. The first number is going to be correspond to the rows, and you can keep track of it other ways, but this is just the convention I'm going to use. So it's going to have 5 rows and let's say 8 columns. So there is my declaration for my two-dimensional integer array. And let's go ahead and assign some values. So I'm going to say int array of 0 sub 0 is going to be 5. And then I'll do a few more of those. And let's just put I can't say 5, I can say 4. Let's do 4, and then 7. That'll be the very last element. And let's do a couple more. Okay, and so that is my these are just some initial values. So now I want to print out this array. Well, there's an easy way to do it if you understand what's going on. If you looked real closely at the loops lesson number 9, then this should make a lot of sense to you. But remember, we're not going to loop over just a single dimension array or a linear array. It's got to go over 2 dimensions, which means we're going to need 2 for loops. So I'm going to say for int I is equal to 0, I is less than x dot length, and then say I plus plus. Now that statement will loop over this array, which I've just highlighted. It'll loop over only the rows, or the array that contains all of these. So that's what this does. And now I need somehow to loop over the second dimension. So I'm going to create another for loop, int, and I can't use I again since it's already in the scope here, so I'm going to call it j is equal to 0. J is less than. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. You might have to think about it for a second, but every row in this two-dimensional array has a certain number of elements in it, and that's very important because row 0 is going to have the same number of elements as row 3, and all of them are going to have the same number of elements. So what I can do is I can say x sub 0, and this is going to call the first layer of this array basically, and it's just going to say that array. So I can call dot length on this and get the length or the number of columns in my two-dimensional array. And then of course after that I say j plus plus. And one thing that you definitely want to watch out for is if you're used to typing for loops all day long, and you're typing i's, and then let's say you say I is less than x0 dot length, you're going to come into a really nasty logic error, and it might take you a while to figure it out because I've done it before and it drives me crazy. So here we have 2 for loops. So it's every time it goes over a row, it's going to go over all the elements in that row or the columns. So what we can do is we can say system.out.print, and we can say x sub I sub j. So it's going to print out this row, the ith row, and the jth column. And you'll notice here I said system.out.print, and I did not say print line, and basically that just says print it all on the same line. And so I'll put a semicolon there, and what this is going to do is it's going to go through and print out all of the elements in this two-dimensional array, but it's not going to skip any lines. So since we want a row and a column representation, after the inside for loop, I'm going to say system.out.println like that. So this is basically happening once for every row, whereas for every column we don't want to print a new line, we just want to print it on the same line. Let me go ahead and throw a space in here like that and add a plus and concat that on. So let's go ahead and compile this code, and I'm going to go ahead and save it. And I've forgotten where I put all this stuff. No. I'll just put it back in here real quick. Here, it's right here, I think. Yeah, very good. I'll just make a new folder. I don't know what I did with all this. I'm going to call it lesson examples. Okay, so matrices, and it's going to be a .java. Go ahead and save that. Looks like I have an error here. Oh, why did I say int? You guys didn't like holler and break your screens, I hope. That should be x. Okay, let's see if that gets rid of my error. Okay, sorry about that. Go to interactions and say Java matrices, and I get an exception. Okay, it says it's 6. What I did here is I Didn't even think about what I was putting, and you probably broke your screens again for that. Sorry. Going to compile that one last time. Now it will run. You can see here I have printed out my 5 row by 8 column array, and you'll see in the spot 0, 0 there's a 5, in 4, 7 there's a 5. So if we go the 4th row or the 5th row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the 7th column it's right there. 2 and 2, so 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, so that's this 5, and then the last one is this 5. So congratulations, you have just created a two-dimensional array. And if you want, you can make 3 dimensions, you can make 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions, you can make as many as you want as long as you have a for loop for each dimension. And of course you have to change this counter variable. So finally, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this syntax here to the enhanced for loop like I showed you in the last lesson. So it's going to be int array I comes from the array x, because remember x is an array of arrays, so every time I iterate over it, it's going to give me back an int array. And then for this one, every time I iterate over one of those arrays, it's going to have an element of an int. So I can say int j, and I come from I, because I takes the value of just one of those arrays. Because remember, each row is like a single array of ints. So I'm going to go here and just replace this with j, and go ahead and compile that, and that should produce the same result. And it sure did. So your assignment, I might get around to putting this on the assignments page, but I want you guys to create a create two-dimensional arrays, make them the same size, and use the math.random function and fill in the arrays with random integers, and then take those two arrays and then add them together so that your result is a single array, but every element is the sum of the corresponding two elements in the two random arrays that you created. And if you can do that, then I think you're ready to move on to the wonders and powerful object-oriented programming topics. So that will be next, and I'm glad you guys are here enjoying the lessons, and I'll see you next time.